Good afternoon, one and all. Om Dhanvantare Namaha. Vak Saushtave Artha Vignane, Pragalve Karma Naipune, Tadabhyase Cha Siddhav Cha Yatet Adhyan Antagaha. Myself, Dr. Shruti KV, second year Panchakarma PG scholar. It's my pleasure to welcome you all for this wonderful 16th webinar session on Shodhana Karmakatha by Professor M. Muralidhar Sharma sir, hosted by Karma Sadhana, Department of Panchakarma, TJMC, Ballari. First of all, I would like to welcome our beloved principal ma'am, Saida Attar Fatima, event head of today's session, Chief Advisor Dr. Rajshekar Ganigar sir, Professor and Head, Department of Dravya Guna. Today's guest speaker and my guru, Professor Muralidhar Sharma sir, former Medical Superintendent of SDMCA Udupi. Organizing Secretary, Dr. Dodbasaya Kendarmat, Professor and Head, Department of Panchakarma. Coordinators, Dr. Rajesh Subur sir, Dr. Trishaila ma'am, Dr. Shilpashri ma'am, and also I welcome all the participants. I take pride in welcoming and making an opening remark on Professor Muralidhar Sharma sir. Sir pursued his undergraduate studies from SDMCA Udupi and post-graduation in the Department of Shalya Tantra from Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. Sir started his career in Ayurveda from his mother institute, SDMCA Udupi. Sir's astonishing knowledge in Ayurveda, maintaining time in all his activities, his simplicity and his way of teaching in classes that is directly from Samhita and making subject looks simple in very efficient way, and his service to the patients and society makes him unique. I consider myself very lucky to have had his classes. Although Sir got retired 2 years ago, he is still a guiding beacon for many Ayurveda scholars, students, practitioners alike. Once again, I welcome you, sir. Over to
Thank you. Thank you. I think we can start with the session.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. Now, see, being a Shalyatantra specialist and being asked to present in a Panchakarma subject like Shodhana Chikitsa, it may look odd, but I consider that this is not really odd thing because after all, Shodhana Chikitsa itself is a extension is a precursor to the surgical treatment. The surgery or Shalyatantra is actually a byproduct of the Shodhana Chikitsa. The reason, to substantiate that, what you see in the textbook is Shodhana is really a procedure where the doshas are removed after a typical process, a process of the dosha visharna, where you give the snehana and then the dosha is brought over to the asana marga and then it is removed. So the whole dosha shodhana chikitsa or the basic treatment is categorized as Antar Parimarjana, Bahi Parimarjana, Shastra Pranidhana. The Bahi Parimarjana is the Shodhana Chikitsa where Panchakarma is followed. Whereas in that process, you will have to process the doshas in such a way that the doshas are brought out to the possible nearest root and the normal physiological responses of expulsion are facilitated in the form of Homana or the Veda. Now, when to have a shortcut to this process, instead of all these process of the dosha conversion, the conversion of the doshas, if you remove the doshas from the site where it is, then it becomes the Rakta Moksha. Now, so that Shastra Pranidhana is actually an extension of the same process, just a modification of the Shodhana process as such. Then, because of this kind of a situation, like the Rakta Moksha, and then all the Ashtabida Shastra Karma procedures which are related to that, Chedana, Vedana, Vedana, these are the byproducts of the same process. The difference is only this much, like when it is the Rakta Moksha, you are removing the doshas from the site where it is, maybe the Rakta, without having that process of separation, like the dosha vishandana is not done. Now, one more next step in the pathogenesis would be when the body tries to fight with the diseases, like the body would be trying to separate that dosha entity, whatever that lesion substance, and that's what we call as paka. It may end up in a suppuration or a fluid may be collected. That fluid may be removed either by the Vyadhana or the Visravana. The Vyadhana or the Bhedana. Vyadhana, where you insert a needle and then aspirate the paracentesis process, or the Bhedana, where you make an incision and drain out. So that's one step ahead of the Shodhana process, where you don't have to have the process of the dosha vishandana. That part is already done by the body, and that doshas are accumulated and separated, and that's how it can be removed. So that's one opportunity to remove the doshas. Suppose it has led to further situation where the dhatu also is involved and the dhatu needs to be removed along with the dosha. Then you have the surgical option of either the lekhana or the chedana. Lekhana is where a small quantity of the tissue is expelled out, removed, cut off, or curated out. Or chedana is where you remove a relatively larger part of the tissue, affected tissue. And then, of course, the last part of the surgical process are either the yeshana and the ahrana. These are meant for the foreign bodies, where it's not the endogenous doshas. The foreign bodies are the issues to be taken consideration of that. And of course, the Sivana is the last. Sivana is to close the opening. So this way, there is a perfect blend between the medical and the surgical discipline. And the surgical discipline, the Shastra Karma as such, Ashtavida Shastra Karma as such, I consider it as an extension of the Panchakarma procedures as such. And that's why Sushruta has said, when the Shalyakatantra is described, he has said that Shalyatantra is having a Sarva Tantra Samanya. So, unlike the current situation where surgical discipline and medical discipline are categorized as separate entities and they are kept in a quadratic compartment, Ayurvedic approach is just a modification and extension of the pathology and continuation of the same thought process of doshas, and hence the identity of Ayurvedic surgery and the Panchakarma, they are perfectly blended, and hence I think a Shalyatantra specialist has an authority to speak on the Panchakarma procedures. And the blend was seen in historical evidence also. Sushruta, a surgeon, would always prefer Snehadi Kriya, non-surgical treatment, as a preferable treatment. Whereas Snehadi Kriya Sarjeshu Shastra Karmana Kriyate, if there is a possibility of a Snehadi Kriya in any of the conditions, in that condition surgery is not done. Whereas a surgical condition still can be tried with the Snehadi Kriya often. And this is one of the important principles which we have to adopt to maintain the identity of Ayurvedic surgery as such. Same way, Charaka would refer a patient to a surgeon when there is a limitation. Tatra dhanvantaryanam adhikara kriya vidho vaidyanam pratayogyyanam vyatha shodhanaropane. So though it was a perfectly blended medical science, depending upon the expertise, there was a mutual coordination, and that's how Ayurvedic practice has developed. To substantiate that, to substantiate whatever I have told, the next part would be the shodhanas, the Visravana as the first step. Now, Visravana, the Rakta Mokshana, which is according to some text as a part of the Panchakarma procedure also, whether it's a Shodhana Chikitsa. And according to Sushruta, it's a part of the surgical process, Shastra Karma. So we will not we will not really dispute on that part, like whether it has to be considered as a Shastra Karma or the Panchakarma, the Shodhana Chikitsa. The basic issue is the Visravana is considered as a preliminary treatment, and many of those diseases where Visravana is indicated, they have been suggested with other options of the surgical treatment in Sushruta, like Vidhradi, Shopa, Visarpa, Granthi, Stanaroga, Vidalika, Krimidanta. These are advised with the Bhedana as the main procedure. They are also categorized as Vedyavyadi. Arbuda, Upadamsha, etc. They also are categorized as the Chedyavyadi. So it's simply the issue is the Visravana is considered as the initial treatment, and when the disease doesn't subside to these procedures like snehadivik kriya yoge tatha lepane api yantyashu vyadhaya shantim tatha samyak sirabhyadata. Sirabhyadha is considered as an option of the treatment after the usual treatment like sneha kriya or the other lepana etc. The conservative treatment, non-interventional treatment has failed, then sirabhyadha is done. When Siraveda also fails to produce the procedures, then you may have an option of the surgical treatment like the Chetana, Bhetana, etc. that as we have already referred to. So this way, the important is the surgery and the medicine, they are perfectly blended in Ayurvedic history, whereas the same is not true in the contemporary medicine history as such. Now, uh, with this prelude, I think we will directly go into the topic which we are supposed to present. Like the next is I will not go into the whole detail as such. So of course, when they contact your organizers contacted me to present, they had suggested like I should uh, present about the modern interpretation of the Shodhana Chikitsa. I denied that. I denied simply because the whole concept of the Shodhana Chikitsa and its the clinical effect cannot be explained with the contemporary biochemistry, because the biochemistry is not capable of grasping this perception. So I would say, like, I would be always talking about from Ayurvedic point of view, though I have read about, or maybe I have certain idea about the basic physiology in the modern context. Because I know about the modern physiology, I will not be able to talk, I will not be presenting about the physiological or pathological aspects in the contemporary language. So the language would be only the Ayurvedic point of view. So from that point of view, when we consider the Shodhana Chikitsa, primarily the Shodhana Chikitsa is considered as a health promoting mechanism. And that's what our Samhitas would say, like you'll have to have the seasonal methods of following these Shodhana Karma, like Madhava Pratame, Masi, Nabasya Pratame, Punaha, Sahasya Pratame, Deva Harayat Dosha Sanjayam. So the opportunity is to remove the Dosha Sanjaya so that there will be no further disease, and hence, because you do this Shodhana according to the seasons, Rutujarya, part of the Rutujarya, then you will have rogas tatha na jayante prakrtisteshu dhatushu uthatavascha abhivartate jara mandyam petja. Because of the Shodhana, you will have a healthy body, and the dhatus will be in a perfect healthy condition. So your maybe you may say the immunity improves, your tolerance to the diseases improves, your strength improves, and so on. So the primarily Shodhana is meant for a health promotion than really the treatment of the diseases. But that's not the only thing. It's also true that the Shodhana also is used for the treatment. Now, the health promotion issue of the Shodhana, you find a very perfect description about the utility of Shodhana in the context of Ashmari Chikitsa. In the Ashmari Nidana, Sushruta has mentioned like तत्र असंशोधनशीलस्य अपथ्यकारिणः प्रकुपितश्लेष्मा मूत्रसम्पृक्तो न प्रविश्य बस्तिम् अश्मरिं जनयति. The primary cause for the Ashmari, according to Sushruta, is the asamshodhanashilata. Those persons who do not have the habit or regular practice of doing the shodhana, they are more prone to develop the Ashmari as a specific disease. I am not saying that Ashmari is the only disease which can occur or which makes the person susceptible due to the absence of the shodhana, but this is what the text would say. Now, at the same time, there is to substantiate what I am saying, and but we can demonstrate practically would be. Sushruta also has said like the incidence of the Ashmari in children is very low. The Prayana Ashmaryaha Balanam Nabhavanti. They comparatively the incidence in children is very low. The reasons are again because the children they have the other reasons like Tesham Alpabastik Kayatvat Anupajita Mamsatvacha. At the same time, because the children may not have an opportunity to undergo the seasonal shodhanas, the incidence of the Ashmari, Mutrashmari, would be more in children. Now, if you look at the statistics of the incidence of the renal calculi throughout the world now, the incidence is something different. You see the maximum incidence after the age of 15, the incidence of Ashmari or the renal calculi before the age of 15 is considered to be very rare in the present day situation. Whereas the incidence is more in the younger, later part of the life, and usually the age between 30 to 40 is the maximum incidence area, and the incidence of the urinary calculi is rapidly increasing. Almost every third person here would have one or other episode of renal calculus in his lifetime. So it has become very rampant. Now, to how to say like whether Sushruta was right or wrong? The present statistics says that the incidence in children is very low, absolutely low. Whereas Sushruta says the incidence of the Ashmari is very high in children because of the Alpakaya Pravasti and Asamshodhana Shilata. Bit of correction, I think. I have told something different. Incidence of Ashmari in children is very high according to Sushruta, whereas the current statistics present the other way. The incidence of this stone is a low asset. The justification or what we can derive from this is because the people, including our Ayurvedic doctors, Ayurvedic students, have not followed this Samshodhana Shilata. Primary question is how many of Ayurvedic doctors, Ayurvedic practitioners are following these Rutucharya and the whole Swastha asset? That question remains as it. And of course, the common public, because we have lost that tradition of using this Shodhana Karma as a health promotion, the incidence of the renal calculi is rapidly increasing, and every year it shows a very high increase. And the situation, the incidence has changed in such a way that the high incidence in children in Sushruta period has been now converted into a statistical low incidence, comparative low incidence, because you have a very high incidence in the adults. And this is a proof that the Asamshodhana Shilata can be a cause for the renal calculi. Of course, if somebody does an objective study and then say like the incidence of the renal calculi can be reduced by a Samshodhana Shilata, that would be an excellent work, but I don't know whether it's possible or it's anywhere done anywhere or not, but it is worth trying. So maybe that's one of the important issues we may consider about the question of karmukata or the utility of the Shodhana Chikitsa. Now, I will not go into the theory part because all of you are well aware of the theory part. I will try to deal with what I have derived during my practice as such. Certain of my perceptions, they are different from the general perceptions. About the Panchakarma practice done throughout in India or in many Ayurvedic institutions, of course, there are many perceptions, individual perceptions. Some people prefer some methods and so on. And it is all based upon the clinical experience. So what I would like to prefer would be, I would like to share my clinical experience with you people now. Now, major issues of difference between what I have perceived with the, and from compared to the others are about the snehana done during the preparation for the Panchakarma. Purva Karma, of course, in the Panchakarma, Purva Karma with the snehana is one of the important issues. Most of the times, the people everywhere in majority of the centers, they consider the snehana has to be done with only a plain ghee or a plain taila as such. Processed or Samskrita taila generally is not preferred. But I would always prefer to do the snehana in my patients with any of the Samskrita taila, ghrita or taila, depending upon the patient's indication, like a Panchatikta Guguru ghrita in a patient who has more of Kapha Vyadhis or Kapha Vataja Vyadhis, Indugandha Grita in Pittaja Lakshanas, Panchagavya Grita in Vataja Lakshana, and so on. So preference of the snehana would be based upon the indications as such. Now, how to justify this? The justification is according to the text as such, the Shodhana for the Shodhana, you will be always preferring Acha Sneha. Now, again, there is some interpretation about the Acha Sneha and the Pravicharana Sneha. Pravicharana Sneha is a food preparation. See, Ethokta Hetva Bhavacha Nachapeyo Vicharana. Achapeya and Vicharana, they are different. And the difference is the Vicharana is a sort of food preparation where either a person is not able to take the Sneha directly or doesn't like the Sneha, cannot tolerate the sneha. In such conditions, it's used as an alternative. So vicharana sneha is only considered as a poor alternative. And vicharana sneha doesn't mean that you are giving some medicines. No, it's not the medicine, it's a food substance. Whereas the medicinal ghee or medicinal taila, so on, they are primarily the acha sneha because of acha means something where the identity of the substance is maintained. So when you have a liquid form and it looks like a taila or the krita, then it's a acha sneha, though it's a process. And uh, so some people interpret that word acha sneha as a plain ghee or a plain taila. And I don't consider that as justified because the primarily when you use the snehana and the dosha vishyandana karma, it should be done based upon the status of the, and then only you will have the proper results as such. Then another issue is about the perception of the shamana sneha and so on. When I use snehana, I use sneha dravyas, krita or the taila, only for the shodhana, and it's always in high doses. That's the prabhuta matra. Whereas I don't prescribe these medicated ghee or medicated taila in small doses for any of the treatment. This is another of the difference between my practice and the usual conventional practice done elsewhere. I have seen many people who are prescribing the Panchatikta Gugulkrita or so on in small doses like 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoon per day for long duration. I consider that's not the correct method because by using that the sneha becomes a satmya. So that's what clearly mentioned in the text like Traham acham mrudo koste kure saptadinam viveta samyak snigdho atava yavad athas satmi bhavet varam. So when you have given the sneha beyond 7 days in any patient, that becomes a sneha satmya, and the sneha satmya is something different, and the samyak snigdha lakshana produced during the sneha procedure is something different. A sneha satmya, of course, is one of the proper method of dietetics, where a person who does rigorous exercise, if he consumes sneha properly and he has sufficient digestive capacity, then the sneha satmya purusha or a snehopajeevi purusha mentioned in the text would be, the lakshana would be Vatanulomyam Diptognihi Varchah Snigdham Asahmadam sorry Diptantaragnihi Parishuddhakostaha Pratyekta Dhatu Balavarnayuktaha Dridendriyaha Mandajarashatayu Snehopadevi Purusha Pradishtaha. A person who takes sneha in small quantities, he will have a sneha satmya, and that sneha satmya will be acting as a brahmana dravya, and it helps in the status of the body where his physical body would be improved. So he becomes a physically strong. Pratyeka dhatu, his dhatus will be somewhat better, and Dittantaragni, his agni would be improved, and he is having a very strong body. That's the advantage, but it may not have the same disease prevention effect. The medical effects of the drugs which are included in the sneha might not be effective. Whereas when sneha is given for as a part of the shodhana, it should be given in larger quantities for short duration of less than 7 days. Then only it will produce the samyak snigdha lakshana of Vatanulomyam Ditognihi Varchaha Snigdham Asamhadam. So Asamhada Varcha, the stools which are become softer, and as such Snehodvegaha Klamaha, the Snehodvega, where the person would have the feeling of the smell of the taste, sneha as well as the taste of the sneha, or adhastha sneha darshan, another of the specific indication which is mentioned as a samyak snigdha lakshana. This would be achieved only when you give large quantities of sneha as such. So that difference has to be very clearly made out. Giving sneha in a small quantity for long duration would be of a health promotion or maybe a brahmana dravya. It could be a dietary supplement, and it could be in any form, either pravicharana form or the acha sneha form. But then the medicinal effects of that dravya, medicinal effect in terms of the disease curing or dosha Pratirodha or dosha pratyanika property of that particular dravya would not be continued because the person would have a sneha sat. And that's exactly what's mentioned by Vagbhata as Amatraya is a Kale Mithyahara Viharta Sneha Karoti Shopa Arsha Tantra Stamba Visantyadaha Kandu Kusta Jura Utklesha Shula Anaha Pramatikana. At the same time, he also says Alam Malan Irayatum Snehascha Satmata Angataha. If Satmya, when the Sneha becomes Satmya, it's not enough to remove the Mala. So it may produce the advantages in terms of either a Pratyagata Balavarna or if the person is not fit for the Sneha and then you have given the Sneha, then it may produce the complications like Shoparsha, Tandra, etc. But when your target is to remove the Mala or the doshas, you are planning for the Shodhana, it has to be always a situation where Sneha Satmya doesn't occur. This is what I perceive as it may be a sort of a confusion, maybe a difference of opinion with a sort of majority of the Pratyakarma practitioners. Maybe a point of debate. But what I have experienced in my clinical practice is when we use the Sneha with a specific doshabhnata property, the results are much better and you will see a significant advantages in terms of the cure of the patient. Of course, when you give these Prabhuta Shodh Sneha Matra, the precautions are you have to see like if the patient already has a Kapadushti Lakshana, it's better to have a precaution, a caution as such, and particularly Mamsalaha Meduraha, when the patient is obese and he has a predominant Kapadushti Lakshana, in that condition, before you give the Snehana in large quantities, it's better to have a Pachana Chikitsa. In my routine clinical practice, we usually use a Agni Chikitsa Lepa in our hospital, SDM hospital. We have modeled a Agni Chikitsa Lepa, and that's done prior to the Shodhana Chikitsa so that the Pachana is done in a Kapaja Vyadhi. So, in a Kapaja Vyadhi, it's better not to start with the Snehana directly and the Shodhana directly. Instead, you have to have a Pachana and then followed by that Pachana, the Shodhana is done. And this is what I usually prefer. I rarely administer Shodhana to a patient directly unless there is a specific indication for that. I would always prefer to follow the Shodhana or the whole process of the Snehana after having a course of Pachana Chikitsa, particularly, very particularly if there is a Kapadushti as such. Then the another of the issue is many times now these days it has become a very common practice. Like you have an instant substance for every practice. Similarly, there is a instant practice of Panchakarma. Instant practice of Panchakarma where the people are given the whole Panchakarma process within a week or so, and within 1 week they say that Panchakarma process is cured. And because people also have lesser time, so one day you give Snehana, next day you give Virechana, and so on. So lots of such practices are there. Again, I'm not criticizing that issue, but from my point of view, that kind of instant therapies of Panchakarma or Shodhana cannot really benefit as such. The proper interval between Snehapana and the Shodhana have to be maintained. So after the Snehana, Svedana has to be done, and for Snigdha Traham Sthita Kriya Virekam, for Virechana there has to be a 3 days gap, whereas Omanam Punah Ekamanyatya, for Omana there should be 1 day gap. So giving a package of treatment where within a few days, 2 or 3 days, the whole Panchakarma is done, that's not really a correct practice, textual practice, and I would not prefer that. Now, another very controversial issue, I'm just talking about the controversy as such. Another controversial issue is the Sadhya Snehana. Sadhya Snehana is again practiced many times, or often a consideration. That word is often used as a justification for that kind of a instant practice. But basically, the idea of Sadhya Snehana is in those patients where really they cannot tolerate the Sneha, like very young children or old age persons, and they cannot tolerate the Sneha. In those conditions only, Sadhya Sneha is indicated, and those Sadhya Sneha dravyas are very limited as such, according to Vagbhata. And those 7 yogas, the Pradyamamsa Rasasteshu Peyaha Snehabrtitaha Tilachurnasya Sasneha Panitaha Krishara, these are specifically indicated, and with the Ravanal Pradhana, with the Lavana he added as a Satya Snehana only as a alternate remedy, and it's not a justification to use that word for every condition as such. Now, again, as I told you, I am not going to all the detailed theory part as such. I will be just giving you certain of the clinical experience part only. When we give the snehana, of course, the indication for the snehana very specifically would be swedana, samshodhana, etc. For the preparation of the shodhana, that would be our target. In other disease conditions, Trivyayama, Saptachintakaha, Vruddha Bala, Bala, Krishaha, Ruksha, Kshinasretaha, in these conditions, when we give the snehana, the dose may be different. You may give a smaller dose, but it's not a part of the shodhana. The part of the shodhana would be when you are giving the snehana in the larger quantities in the Prabhuta Matra as such. Of course, the contraindications for the snehana as per the text are Atimandagni Tikshnagni Stuladurbalaha. So, Pariksha of the Agni is a very important part before you select a patient for the snehana. If the patient has any Agnimadhya, it's better to correct the Agnimadhya and then start with the Sneha Chikitsa wherever possible. If not possible, if the Agni seems to be not correctable, then better to avoid the Snehana, Prabhuta Matra Snehana, so that you will not have the major complications as such. So that's about the general issues as such. Then the coming to the Shodhana as such, the first of the Shodhana as you have the Vamana. In my practice, I use Vamana comparatively less frequently than the Virechana. Even in a Kapaja Vyadhi, though textually we are supposed to use Vamana, I would prefer to use Virechana wherever possible, because Vamana, I don't say that I don't do the Vamana at all. I do suggest Vamana only in a fit patient. The major issue with the Vamana is the fitness of the patient. Most of the patients who have already pre-existing comorbidity like Hridroga, Udavarta, or Raktapitta, Krisha, Bala, Vruddha, Durbala, these are the absolute indications for the Vamana, though you have a large number of disease conditions. But whenever I have highlighted this red, that's to highlight the maximum importance from the clinical point of view. When a patient is emaciated and already having some comorbidity, most of the times the patients who are hypertensive or maybe having a cardiac history, I would prefer to avoid Vamana. I don't say that Vamana should not be done. I would prefer to avoid Vamana because it can result in certain risk as such. Practically, it will be risky. Whereas Vamana is definitely better indicated in a healthy person. And from the Swasthavata point of view, if the person otherwise is fit, the Vamana is definitely a better choice. But most of the times in a clinic, when you have chronic patients coming to you and you have comparatively lesser chance of these indication of the Vamana, but still occasionally the Vamana could be indicated. But in Vamana, I would always consider the fitness of the patient as an important criteria. If you do not consider that fitness of the patient, I don't say that there will be very serious problem, but it can create some trouble which may make the whole process unacceptable to the patient. And the specific indications, now, of course, the indications mentioned in the text, everything is fine. That when I have suggested these red letters, it's about the conditions where I prefer to use the Vamana, like very chronic allergies, allergic rhinitis, or respiratory conditions like Pinasa, Kasa, Shwasa, the chronic respiratory conditions which are not amenable to the medical treatment. Then Kushta, Kafaja Kushta Lakshana conditions, like particularly psoriasis-like conditions. And the gastrointestinal tract pathologies, like where the patient would have a very chronic gastritis, Trilasa, Rochaka, Avipakaha, and Apasmara Unmadaha, psychiatric illness. These are the specific conditions where I prescribe Vamana more frequently than the others. When I say this, the other indications also are valid. I am not saying that other indications are not valid. I am just giving you my experience where we have treated a large number of patients of that category. Similarly, the Virechana. With the Virechana, comparatively, the contraindications are lesser. The major issues are when the patient has a anal pathology like fissure or maybe a piles as such, though it's not an absolute contraindication, it's somewhat better to avoid the Virechana in such conditions. Or Rakta Pitta, where the patient has a bleeding disorder. Other than that, majority of the patients can tolerate Virechana very well. If the patient is very much emaciated, if the patient has already a pre-existing electrolyte imbalances, then of course the Virechana may not be prescribed as such. And Garbhini, of course, pregnancy also, I would prefer to avoid the Virechana. And otherwise, Virechana can be given more safely. The comparatively, the complications which occur would be lesser, and you are more safer as such. Indicate, and as I told you, though our text says that Virechana is specific for Pitta only, but both Karpaja Vyadhi and Pittaja Vyadhi can be managed with the Virechana satisfactorily. Though I agree that Vamana would be more specific for the Karpaja Vyadhi, but still you can manage even a Karpaja Vyadhi with the Virechana. The specific conditions where I prescribe Virechana would be Kushta, Meha, even in Rakta Pitta, Virechana can be given unless there is a very frank bleeding. So Rakta Pitta is an indication as well as a contraindication. Like Rakta Pitta in the sense, like it may not be a frank bleeding disorder, but a patient with vasculitis, which I also consider as Rakta Pitta, I prefer Virechana. Whereas if a patient has a bleeding disorder, then I may not prescribe the Virechana as such. Then Krimicosta, naturally, Virechana is a conventional treatment which is done even in household practice. Then skin disorders like Visarpa, where you will have a rapid inflammatory disorders of the skin, and chronic painful conditions like Parshashuddha Udavarta, and pigmentary disorders like Vyenga Nilika, and of course the psychiatric conditions like Unmada, Apasmara, either Virechana or the Manasi, Kushta, Apasmara, Unmada. I may prescribe a Vamana if a patient is otherwise fit, and I may prefer a Virechana if the patient is not otherwise fit or you find difficulty in managing. So most of the times I prefer Virechana than the Vamana in such condition. Similarly, the Asthapana. The Asthapana Basti is rather more commonly used to Panchakarma than both Vamana or the Virechana in my clinical practice. And the specifically Asthapana is somewhat not indicated if the patient has Ajirna and Ati Snigdha Pitta. Now, the Snehas, there is another issue. There are certain practices like multiple process of the Shodhana are done simultaneously. A patient is given Vamana, at the same time a Basti also is given. I think that's against the text concept. If the patient already has a Snehana, till that Sneha Parihara Kala, the Asthapana cannot be given. It can produce some harmful complications. I have seen that the patient will have more troublesome complications when you have given that together. So it's better not to have a Sankara, the combination of multiple form of the Shodhana simultaneously. There has to be an interval. So Ati Snigdha Pita Sneha. So Snehana is not done as a preparation for the Asthapana. Now there is another issue also. There are certain practices somewhere, and again I'm not commenting on anyone, but there are certain areas, there are some practices like where for the Asthapana also, Snehana and Svedana are done. But it's a very frankly told in Charaka, like a Pita Sneha is a contraindication for the Asthapana, and hence it's better not to go for the Snehana prior to that, because after all, Basti is a process where the doshas are removed from the rectum, where already the dosha has reached the asana marga, and moreover, it's not only removal of the doshas, you will be nourishing the Vatasthana, it's not only Shodhana, there will be a sort of Brahmana also, you have the Brahmana Bastis also. And hence, there is no need of that Purva Karma of Snehana and Svedana in case of the Asthapana or the Anuvasana, Basti Chikitsa as well. Or in case of Vamana and Virechana, immediately after Vamana or Virechana, Basti is not given, there has to be Parihara Kala. Now again, there is a dispute about the Parihara Kala, like how many days as such. I would be keeping a minimum 15 days, 2 weeks, ekapaksha, as the gap. Though again in the text you will have different descriptions. Some say that 1 week is enough, some say that 2 weeks are necessary, some say that masa is 1 month is necessary. But in my practice, I keep minimum 15 days of gap. After Vamana the Vejana, if I have to start with the Basti, I would be giving Basti only after 2 weeks as such. Or similarly, after Nashakarma also. So a combination of overlapping of the Shodhan Chikitsa, I don't practice in my practice as such. Similarly, the indication for the Astapana, they are quite huge. Almost every Vata Vyadhi, it could be Sarvanga Vata Vyadhi or Ekanga Vata Vyadhi. A large number of patients, I do prescribe the Basti, and the yoga of the Basti, combination of the Dravya used for the Basti would be according to doshas. And the other indications are the Unmada, Jwara, Parvabheda, the joint disorders, particularly rheumatoid like conditions, Katigraha, these are one of the indications. Menstrual disorders, Rakshayataha, then stick, Jana, Janga, Guru, Gulpa, Pani, Parsha, Yoni, Bahanguli, Stana, Adanta Nakha, Parvasti, Shulaha. Many times, different sorts of the Vata Vyadhi where the patient will present with the painful conditions in the joints, fibromyalgia like conditions, or different forms of arthritis. Vata Vyadhayo Visheshana. These are the indications for the Basti. The selection of the Dravya would be according to dosha condition of the patient. Whereas Anuvasana Basti, virtually there is not much of a contraindication. There is not much of a contraindication. Almost in every condition, but Anuvasana Basti can be given. But only the specific indication is Abhukta Bhaktaha, where the person has not taken the food. It's better not to give Anuvasana Basti. Anuvasana Basti is always preferred to be given after the person has consumed the food, and that precaution has to be followed. And then, of course, the contraindications mentioned in the text, like Vishagara Pitaha, may not be of a significance in our current medical practice. So, almost every patient we may prescribe Anuvasana Basti, unless there is a specific contraindication like anal pain. If the patient has a painful fissure, maybe I may avoid the Basti, because not that it's totally contraindicated, but it may not be acceptable to the patient. And indications also, you have a huge indications, and almost every condition of Vata Vyadhi, it can be described as a treatment. Like Anuvasana can be given. And the next is the Shirovirajana. Shirovirajana, in my clinical practice, I do use very comparatively lesser, not very frequently. And the contraindications as per the text are Ajirna, Bhukta, etc. But practically, that need not be considered. Maybe the issue would be Andutaududineja, the season. Shirovirajana given in rainy season, like when it's very moist throughout, may produce certain complications like the nasal discharges may occur. The patient may develop the symptoms, something like the cold later. But beyond that, there are not much of a very serious contraindications, though the text mentions about many of those specific contraindications. Of course, the textual contraindication of murchita, unconscious, of course, it's absolutely true. In a patient who is unconscious, practically there is no question of giving the Shirovirajana as such. Otherwise, it can be given safely. The indications, of course, the text would say a lot of indications, but my preference, I would prefer that in case of the Ardhavabedaka, patients who have the headache as a chronic headache conditions like sinusitis or migraine-like conditions, then Ardhis Apatantraha, Apatantraka, Apatanakaha, facial palsy, neurological disorders, even psychiatric disorders like Unmada, and then Shiro Danta Manya Stamba Gala Hanugraha, the disease, painful conditions related to the head and neck, particularly torticollis, spondylitis like conditions. I would prefer Shirovirajana, and the other conditions, of course, I don't use Shirovirajana as frequently as the others. Like. Now, when I say all this about the clinical experience, you may feel like, am I crazy in the text? No. text would say, like whenever you have a clinical experience, the clinical experience has to be the ultimate to decide about which form of the Shodhana has to be done and how you can modify it. That's it. येभ्यो यन्न हितं यस्मात् कर्म येभ्यश्च यद्धितं न च एकान्तेन निर्दिष्टे अपि अर्थे अभिनिवेशे पुनः. The text would say, like, you cannot specify a indication for a specific patient as such. Text would give you a guideline, and hence स्वयं अप्यत्र वैद्येन तर्क्यं बुद्धिमता भवेत्. The Vaidya has to analyze the condition, and hence the person can be prescribing a medicine or a prescription even if it is not mentioned in the text. Tasmat satya binirdeshe, even if there is a textual suggestion, kuryad ushyam swayam dhiya, you may have your own analysis, and with that analysis you may prescribe, and that's what is mentioned, like vina tarkena ya siddhi adricha siddhireva. Unless you have a clinical experience and a logical basis, your treatment or whatever the success you may get, it may be just an accidental success, otherwise it's not. So that's about the basic issues, about the controversial issues related to the Shodhana. Now, to summarize what I have told you, like the usual my prescriptions, again I have summarized, like the conditions where I would prescribe Vamana, Virajana, Basti, Nasya, commonly the Vamana, psoriasis, chronic obstructive disorders, pulmonary disorders, psychiatric illness. These are the major conditions. I would prefer the Vamana. Virechana, I would prefer psoriasis and other skin disorders. Again, COPD, as I told you, it's either in the same condition. Rheumatoid and other autoimmune disorders. After a course of Pathana Chikitsa, Agni Chikitsa is the usual. Early cirrhosis, psychiatric illness, seizures, these are the conditions where Virechana could be given, where you have the Pitta Lakshana. Basti, of course, is more frequently used treatment, and in many of the neurological pathologies, including the cerebrovascular accidents, degenerative bone disorders, rheumatoid pathologies, peripheral ischemic disorders. These are the conditions where I would prefer to give Basti quite frequently, and the results are satisfactory. And we will have many advantages, something which is not otherwise possible also. Nasya, I would prefer in case of sinusitis, palsy, migraine, vision defects, rarely, then psychiatric illness and seizures. These are the conditions which I generally prescribe the Shodhana in my practice. Then coming to that basic question, like we can see the results here in large number of patients. The number of patients who are gratified with our treatment is quite huge as such. And many of those conditions which are otherwise incurable in any contemporary system of medicine, they would have a significant relief. All this is possible. So naturally the question comes in, like, can we substantiate these with the contemporary theories? I would always say, like, the contemporary physiology is not able to appreciate or is not able to understand the basic mechanism of the perception. We have seen, like, when the snehana is given, the patients are given large amount of the sneha dravyas. Instead of the fat level being in the lipid level in the body being increased, it gets reduced when you have given large amount of the sneha. Then, of course, the patient would have a reduction of the body weight when snehana is done. Or there are certain, now how to justify this when you are giving more oily substances orally, and if the patient's lipid level is getting reduced, it's not possible to explain with the contemporary theories, existing theories. We may have to have a new theory which may not be really accepted. So instead of going for that new theories, of course, I would always use the theory, like if there's somebody asks like question like how it affects. I would give an example, like when you are cleaning the room, you may use a moist cloth and then clean the room. Naturally, when you use a moist cloth, the floor becomes wet temporarily. But if you use a bucket of water and then mop it up, the room becomes cleaner and the moisture may not remain for a longer duration. It helps, it's a more capable of removing the moisture with a mop. After you have used a larger bucket of water, where naturally your efforts to clean that would be more effective. And the idea of snehana, I always compare to that kind of a process where instead of using a small quantity to clean, you use a larger quantity of water to clean so that it becomes cleaner and it becomes more effective. But this is not a biological theory, so it cannot be substantiated. And with lots of experiments which we have done, and we have tried all that with the Basti also, we have tried like how the absorption occurs. You cannot just give a substantiated theory accordingly. So what we have to do as an Ayurvedic practitioners would be, I always ask the question like, whom we have to convince? Is it the common man to be convinced, or is it the so-called scientists in the high category who are to be convinced, who have a bias? So I use the word so-called because the contemporary system medicine, most of the times, particularly the authorities of the common contemporary system medicine, they have a bias. They may not be ready to accept. And the current method of research methodology, so-called double-blind research methodology, and so on, they are not really suitable for Ayurvedic practice. So for Ayurvedic research, there is a need to have a different sort of the research methodology. And the basic issue is the suffering patient should be convinced. And the suffering patient would be convinced comparatively easily when he is relieved of the trouble he has, which is not otherwise curable. And if we do that, if a large number of the population is accepting the treatment and they say that they are benefited, naturally the policymakers would now have to consider, and then they have to maybe understand in their language. Say, why should I explain in their language? I would be explaining in my language in terms of the dosha lakshanas and the suggested treatment, and the outcome is felt by the patient. And the need for substantiating to the so-called scientific community is only from the point of view of globalizing or maybe the larger issue. I'm saying that I'm not suggesting that that kind of an approach is not useful, but we have to change the table, turn the table. There is no need to explain in our language. If we show that we are effective and if the people accept, then these others also have to learn the basic language of Ayurveda, and I hope, we will have such a situation, though not immediately in the long run. And if all of us try to do that, I think it's not impossible. Last point, I'll just give you, though we have hundreds of patients treated in that category, I just give one case history, one case presentation which I have treated. This is about a patient, a young boy, who met with a road accident and then had a complex fracture of the ankle area. And because the fracture was complex and there was a possibility of complications, the patient was referred from Davadigere to a higher center in Mangalore. And in Mangalore, they studied in a higher center, very sophisticated higher center. I will not name the hospital. The patient had undergone the first signs amputation at the ankle level, and then after a few days, the amputation. After the amputation, he met with rather the stump didn't heal. There was necrosis of the stump. They had to revise the amputation. The amputation was revised and the below knee amputation was done. And after this below knee amputation, again within 3 or 4 days, the patient became toxic. And then again the patient was reinvestigated. And when the patient was reinvestigated, it was found that the femoral artery had a major blockade, and the only option left over was a third revision of the amputation. A above knee amputation was recommended. By this time, the patient's party, naturally, they became frustrated and they had lost all the resources and they couldn't really continue with the resources. Naturally, at that end, somehow the patient came to our hospital, SDM hospital, which usually, and most of the times it happens like many of those patients who have lost the hope everywhere, they come to us and they try this asset. And the patient came to me on 27th, yes, of course, came to us on 26th of December 2017. And at that time, when the patient, the stump was having all that necrotic changes, the patient was very toxic, and all the signs of a gangrene had set in. And at that time, immediately what I started with the Manjusthadic Sharadasti, and then of course the internal medicines. I have an antibiotic also, gentamicin. The oldest antibiotic was given to that patient because all the other new generation antibiotics were tried already in the other hospital and patient had become resistant. Now, you can see the changes which you see on 26th itself, we started with the metastatic Sharavasky. 28th, the stump had shown some signs of vascularity. 29th, the stump had shown a better vascularity and almost a healthy stump as such. 30th and 31st, by 5 days, we could see a change in the tissue, granulation tissue had started, and we had a healthy stump, patient's toxicity had reduced. And on 1st of January, we did a resuturing, so we didn't have a revised amputation. The amputation was not done, resuturing was done, and you see the result by the whole stump had healed, and the patient now is having a prosthesis. Now he is able, I have shown you a photograph with only the crutches, but now the patient is able to walk the prosthesis. Now, this is possible only because the metastatic Sharavasky was given. This kind of a result is possible. Now, this is again why a surgical treatment and a medical treatment could be combined and so on, so all that justification, like whether a Shalitantra specialist can prescribe Panchakarma procedure or not. These are all the issues, controversy. The answer to all such questions is this case. So that's why I have just given you the description of one of that patient. Of course, it's not only one case, we had similar issues, lots of that other way. But the primary issue is whether that clot has dissolved or not, whether it is the microcirculation which has improved or not. These cannot be just demonstrated unless you have done a similar example on a guinea pig. The question was like whether it's a microcapillary circulation which has improved or whether the clot in the femoral artery has got dissolved. It cannot be substantiated again. The primary issue which I would say, like a patient who had spent more than 2 lakhs and then was in a hopeless condition, was supposed to have a third amputation. You can imagine about the impact of that third amputation on a young boy. And he could just have a resolution, a complete resolution, and start with walking with a budget of not more than 7,000 rupees. So I think that's more scientific than so-called otherwise scientific assets. So when I say this, I am not saying, I am not presenting as a blunt statement, but I think Ayurvedics should be able to hold on to such views also. That's what is necessary. With this, let me conclude. I think I have already given you lots of scope for questions, so there will be many questions. I'll try to spend more time on answering those questions as such. So to conclude again, the basic issue which we have discussed that Shodhana Chikitsa is primarily a health promoting regimen, but it also is used as a crisis resolution. And when used in appropriate condition, it can be a extremely beneficial treatment and something which cannot be perceived by the contemporary knowledge as such. So, but when you use these prescriptions, the protocols need to be followed carefully. We are not supposed to, even from the text to a great extent, but though clinical experience is the ultimate decisive factor. With this, I will conclude, and I hope there will be many questions, and I will try to answer the questions as such. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Firstly, I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation in spite of your busy schedule. Thank you for highlighting the clinical importance of Panchakarma. That is, your clinical experiences give us a confidence to practice Shodhana Chikitsa and all. Shall I move on to the interactive session, sir?
Yes, sir, of course.
Question from Radha Chetana. Namaste, sir. In Atisnigdha Lakshana, Pandu Roga is mentioned. How can it be justified?
It's justification in the sense it's seen like, see, you can observe that in a person, if you have given Sneha Dravya for a long duration, prolonged duration, it does produce the same effect. So when I say Pandu, it's not only anemia. Again, consider Pandu as an anemia also is not justified. So you will have all the Agnimandya Lakshanas, the features which are suggestive of the Kapha Prakopa, they are produced in a person who consumes large amount of the Sneha Dravyas. So that's the exact issue. You can demonstrate that. It's seen. Right.
Thank you, sir. Another question from the same. How does Virechana works out in Krimi Koshta and whether it's the classical one or Sadhyo Virechana?
See, when we prescribe the Virechana, it should be all the classical process. So if it is a question of expulsion of the krimi, simply the krimi apaharana, of course, you may give a purgative. But that purgative, giving a purgative is not a Virechana Chikitsa. But a person, if at all a child is brought to you with that pinworms, for a moment to give the relief, you may give a purgative. That's not the Virechana Chikitsa. But if a child has a persistent history of these krimi and none of the antihelminthics have helped him, then you may plan a Virechana. And then if you give the Virechana, you can see that the recurrence rate is reduced and most of the times it doesn't recur at all. That's the difference between a purgation and a Virechana. So I would not translate Virechana as purgation at any context.
Thank you, sir. Question from Shruti Kopta. Why there is a gap of 1 day after Snehapana in Vamana and gap of 3 days after Snehapana in Virechana?
And that's, I think that's already described in the text very classically, because in the Vamana you are removing the Ama dosha, Kapha dosha. So there is no need of that digestive process to be there. Whereas in the Virechana, you will be removing the Pakka dosha. For the Pachana, you need that time of 3 days. So, and that's what's mentioned in the text. I think there is no need of any other specific comment from our side.
Thank you, sir. Question from Rakesh Mulya. Good afternoon, sir. Can we give plain ghee for Snehapana? If so,
okay, I think I have already answered that question. The plain ghee is given as a Snehapana in majority of the situations, but I don't prefer that. And I can show you the difference in the outcome. When you give a Samskrita Sneha, the results are somewhat different than the plain ghee or plain taila given. So that's what I have observed in my clinical practice. And what I feel is text also suggests the same.
He has mentioned again, sir, if so, it will not causes ama in patient. In one article for patient of progressive supranuclear palsy, they give plain ghee and they have achieved good result. So he wanted to ask that.
Okay, all right. I'm not saying that plain ghee should not be given, but I can demonstrate to you that comparatively, a patient given in the plain, treated with the plain ghee and a patient treated with the Samskrita Gatra, you can see the results, the difference in the results. So this has to be proved on a clinical platform than really the other way. So then I say this, I know that it's not, it is a large number of Panchakarma practitioners, they prefer the plain ghee than really with the Samskrita Gita. With all that awareness, I have raised that issue. So it's a matter of controversy, but what I feel is the controversy can better resolve on a clinical platform as such. So if you compare that, next time whenever you have an opportunity to do the Shodhana, you try this, and then if you have your previous experience, compare that, and then you'll know like the differences.
Thank you, sir. Question from Dr. Piyush Gupta. Clinically dose of Shamana Sneha and Sadhya Snehana.
That's again, I think I have already answered that controversy. The issue of Shamana Sneha is even if you are using the treatment Snehana for a treatment of your disease, a medical using that Sneha as a medicine, it cannot be Hrisiyasi mantra or Hrisva mantra. It should be Prabhuta mantra. Whereas if you are giving it as a nourishment, a oily substance for nourishment, Brahmanartha, then the smaller quantities like 2 teaspoons, 3 spoons, like that can be the right dose. Hrisiyasi mantra can be given. So that's a very clear-cut issue. There need not be a controversy on that part.
Thank you, sir. During Snehapana, antihypertensive or antibiotic should be continued or not?
If the patient is on some essential treatment, like if the patient is already having hypertension and antihypertensives are being taken, definitely yes, it has to be continued. So you will have to decide, like it has to be case-specific decision based upon the need of those medicines in such patient. I can think of it is better to minimize the other medicines taken during the Snehapana or Shodhana Chikitsa as such. But essential drugs cannot be stopped. So when a detailed answer can be given only when you have a specific patient. The basic issue is essential drugs cannot be stopped. They should not be stopped rather. And if the patient is on such medicine for a long duration, naturally that cannot be stopped. Like anti-diabetic drug in a patient of diabetes patient, anti-hypertensive drugs, cardioprotective drugs. If the patient is on that and already has a critical illness, better not to stop that.
This is a practically faced question. On the day of Virechana, if patient menstruate, then what should be done on that day?
I do continue with that. Say menstruation, I don't consider as a contraindication for any of the show. Even Basti, I do give. Though our context says that in our Rutu condition, Basti is not given, but practically that's not possible. I consider menstruation as a physiological process and it's not a pathological entity, and hence there is no need to worry about that. So, and I have treated a large number of patients with both Virechana as well as Basti in during the menstruation, and no complication has occurred. Though I may not be able to give you the exact number, like how many, but the number is quite few. So you can use these treatments safely. Maybe it may be a bit inconvenient to the patient. That inconvenience, of course, patient can be counseled and maybe make it acceptable.
Question from Dr. Kallangoda. Is it necessary to take physician opinion for Vamana Karma, Virechana and Nasya?
See, now if you are, the issue is there has to be an assessment, evaluation. If you are capable of assessing yourselves, that's fine. If you are not capable, you want to have an opinion, definitely you can take the opinion. I'm not saying that a second opinion is essential, but I would say evaluation is essential. That's it.
Question from Dr. Ashwini Amarnath. Namaste, sir. Why there is a difference of opinion regarding the Shodhananga Sneha Matra in different texts?
See, that's what I said, like the clinical experience. The clinical experience of the physicians may have changed. Like, but from now, whatever the text would say, the matras, the doses of many of the drugs which are mentioned in our samhitas, they seem to be quite large in the present day situation. It's not only about the sneha. Many of the present day population may not be able to tolerate the doses which are mentioned in the text. So many a times we may have to change according to the context. So from that point of view, the suggestion about the this dose in Bhagavata is very practical, where it's mentioned on the basis of the prapunja, the size of the hand of the person. So for a child, if the hand will be smaller, so the dravya which is retained in the hand will be lesser. For an adult, it will be more. So if you count in that kind of a patient-specific dosage, a biometric dosage, which would be the future in the modern medicine also. So it's a very futuristic approach as such. So instead of going for a fixed dose of a dravya, if you can have a custom-made dosage for any of the medicines, of course, in the contemporary modern system of medicine, this is one of the major areas of the new research, like how to plan a dosage of any drug. It's not only about the Shodhana, how to plan a dosage of any of the drug, which will be suitable to the patient. Whenever we give a prescribed dose, either it will be more or lesser, so you will be based on prescribing or planning that dose based upon the statistical inferences, and these statistical inferences often may not be suitable to your patient as well. So from that point of view, the dosage decided based upon the these biometric evidences or biometric methods would be always more meaningful, more useful. So from that point of view, methodology or the dosage mentioned in Bhagavata, I consider more practicable than the fixed dosage schedules.
Thank you, sir. Question from Suhasini. Which Panchakarma is to be selected for the management of fatty liver associated with pelvic calcium system dilatation?
A patient who has a pelvic calcium system of renal system and hepatic pathology. Yes, of course. See, in a patient with a renal pathology, I would try to avoid Basti karma. I have seen that, I have experienced it. Many of the patients with the renal pathologies, Basti karma, particularly if it has a renal insufficiency. If it's a simple pelvic calcium dilatation without any biochemical changes, the biochemical renal functions are normal, I don't consider that the Basti is contraindicated. But if the patient has a compromised renal function, his creatinine level is above normal, better to avoid the Basti. Virechana can be safely given women, of course, may not be a contraindication for the patient with the hepatic pathology, but a patient with the fatty liver is more prone to develop rapid changes or rapid responses to changes in the body conditions. The safe would be Virechana would be a safe option.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Rajeshwari. A difference. How will be effective Sadhya Vamana and Sadhya Virechana? How much it will be effective?
I have never tried Sadhya Vamana or Sadhya Virechana, except now even the text would say about Sadhya Vamana or Sadhya Virechana only in the Swayam Pravritta Dosha condition. Otherwise, Sadhya Vamana or Sadhya Virechana is not my cup of tea. I never prescribe that, and I always say that that kind of an approach where you directly give an emetic or a purgative, I won't consider this as Vamana or Virechana. You may say that it is either emesis or purgation. So it's not a comprehensive Virechana Chikitsa. So Virechana or the Vamana, they need to have a Purva Karma of Snehana, and that process of the Dosha Vishyandana, and then the dosha has to be brought to the Asana Marga. That kind of process is essential to consider that as a Virechana. Swayam Pravritta Dosha conditions, of course, you will get them quite rarely in the clinical practice. In that condition, there too, it's not giving the Virechana, it's only that Swayam Pravritta Dosha should not be blocked. So, and rarely you get such conditions, but whenever you have such a condition, definitely yes, I will not give any sub drug which would have maybe a Kashaya Rasa Dravyas in a patient with Virechana, which will have a blockade like condition, or even in a anti-emetic, so-called anti-emetics. I never prescribe in any of patients who come to me with a plant formation. So that's the basic issue. So Sadhya Vamana and Sadhya Virechana, I have never tried in that sense, like a patient coming to you and then giving the Virechana, and I always criticize that as not a standard method as.
Thank you, sir. Another question from Suhasini. Sir, Avtar Bhaktika Snehapana in Avabahuka and Avapidaka Snehapana in Mutragata Rogas. How to understand its mode of action?
See, the mode of action, I think, as I told you, it's only because of Avapidaka Sneha and Avapidaka Dravyas. The methodology is described in Bhagavata very clearly. Like it's only that the Anna Kala and the Sneha, the relation between Anna Kala and the Sneha. Again, there is a bit of misinterpretation, like whether there has to be two Anna Kalas in between the Sneha or two Sneha Kalas in between the Anna. So that part of difference is that. From my clinical experience, I have not tried that option. So from clinically, I have not tried that option. So I would always make it the process simpler. I follow the conventional method of giving the Snehana as a single dose and then following the Shodhana, and I have got sufficient results. Theoretically, of course, the Avapida Snehana is mentioned in case of Mutrakrishna and Mutragata, but in my practice, I have not tried that. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Question from Dr. Bhagesh Pangam. What is the role of different Shodhanas, especially Basti in chronic renal pathologies like CKD?
See, as I told you, in CKD, in a patient who has a renal insufficiency, I would never prescribe Basti because I have tried that in my initial days of clinical practice, and I have seen many complications. So now I never try that in a patient with the renal insufficiency. Patient who have a compromised renal functions, I would not try any form of the Basti.
From Dr. Yasmin, I heard from an Ayurveda practitioner about Basti using coffee decoction. What is you?
I don't know. So, I will not comment on such things where I have no experiences.
How to treat asymptomatic gallstones with Panchakarma?
Asymptomatic?
Gallstones. Gallbladder stones.
Okay. Virechana is one of the options. Definitely, yes, Virechana is one of the options. I consider this as a variant of Gulma. And Gulma indication is a Virechana.
Another question from Dr. Trupti. Can we practice Nasya daily in allergic rhinitis or sinusitis?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Definitely, yes. And I would not even suggest all that Puro Karma for Nasya like Stvadana. Just a Pratimarsha, one drop every day would be enough in chronic conditions, mild conditions. So that's the absolutely true, and
With
it will
what
be very
medicine?
useful.
With what medicine they have asked?
Medicines, it could be any of that, but usually my prescription would be simple. Anuthaila is my usual prescription. Of course, we may prescribe any other thailas depending upon this dosha lakshanas. Anuthaila is somewhat a broad spectrum, can be used in majority of them.
Question from Dr. Vishwanath Dikshit. Sir, can Ksharabasti be given in 80 plus years of age in peripheral vascular condition? Who is
Yes, yes, of course. I have given in beyond 80 also. I have treated in patients who are beyond 80 also in peripheral ischemic conditions. Manjistaric Ksharabasti is the one which I usually prefer and can be safely given.
Okay, question from Sangamesh Patil. Sir, in case of Kafaja type of Kushta, where Snigdhata is present more, whether we can do Basti line of treatment like Vaitarana Basti, considering Sroto Shodhana?
I think in a Kapaja Vyadhi and particularly Kushta, Virechana is a better option. So I would always prefer Virechana than really the Basti in such conditions. Of course, Basti can be given. I am not saying that Basti is contraindicated, but to see a better results, it will be Virechana is a better option in such conditions. But if the patient already has a predominant kapha lakshanas like more strava, discharges over that, then I would have a short course of Patana Chikitsa, internal medicines, any of the Ipana Patana Dravyas are given depending upon the patient's status. Or if the patient its condition is quite serious, severe, like, then I would prefer Agni Chikitsa, which we usually give in our SDMX hospital, like it's one of the patent method of treatment, and then give the Virechana. That's how we manage it.
Thank you, sir. Question from Amog. What is the reason for not advising Snehana through more than one marga at a time per day?
More than one
Marga. If we give
I think that's a very simple practical issue. You cannot just use every passage as such. It will be overdosing. So flooding is not really the choice. As well. Treatment therapy has some method, so it's not flooding. I think that would be very apt answer.
Sir, question from Bharati Acharya. Which Nasya Karma is useful in snoring condition?
Snoring, of course, you have to assess the cause. So if it is due to these nasal obstruction pathologies, it's a Kapaja Vyadhi, so you say Tikshana like Anathaila. But if the snoring is due to a psychiatric disturbance, patients who have anxiety and so on, many times it could be a cause. Neurological pathologies also, not neurological diseases, maybe something related to neurological issues, then it could be Brahmanasya, like Ashwagandha or Balashwagandha is the usual preferred.
Question from C. Raghu. Sir, is there any complications for continued usage of Arogyavardhini Vati? I heard that it's not used for more than 21 days continuously. Is it correct, sir?
In my clinical experience, I have used Arogyavardhini for years together in many patients. So that kind of an apprehension is not necessary. If there is an indication, yes, of course, it has to be given. If there is no indication, no medicine has to be prescribed. If the patient has an indication, definitely yes, we can give it for a very long duration. So I have patients who are taking Mrityunjaya Rasa and Arogyavardhini for more than 20 years continuously, and nothing happened. So that kind of an apprehension is not necessary.
Question from Dr. Rupa. Application of Utkleshana, Shodhana and Shamana Basti in Amavata.
I think there is, what is the question there?
Like when in Amavata, when to use Utkleshana Basti, when to apply Shodhana Basti, when to we need to give Shamana Basti.
See, I think the issue is very clear. Like if the patient is presenting with the Ama Lakshanas, so I would always prefer a Pachana Chikitsa than the Basti. So Utkleshana Basti is mentioned maybe from the point of view of Ama, but to make the treatment more acceptable in the practical clinical condition, my preference would be a Pachana Chikitsa in the beginning. Then after the Pachana Chikitsa, depending upon the patient's status, I may give a Shodhana Basti, Kshara Basti, or a Brahmana Basti. So usually in a course of rheumatoid arthritis, a patient with very chronic rheumatoid arthritis and then having lots of deformity. So usually my treatment would be initially on course of Agni, followed by that the patient would be given Virechana after a few days. Then the patient would be given a Ksharabasti course, or at times a Ksharabasti and Pachana Chikitsa could be, that Agni Chikitsa could be combined if the patient is otherwise fit, and then a Virechana later. And then once these clinical symptoms of Ama Lakshana are reduced, the rigidity is reduced, and it's only the deformity left over, then a Brahmana Basti like Yapana Basti, Raja Yapana Basti is prescribed. This is the usual course, though it may not be used in every patient. It depends upon the patient's condition. In some patients, we may end up with only the Pachana Chikitsa and Akshara Basti. In some patients, we may extend it to Virechana, and occasionally we may extend it to Raja Yapana Basti, depending upon the course of the disease in the patient. I think I have answered that question.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Bahudosha Avastha is indicated for Shodhana, sir. How to understand that concept, Bahudosha Avastha, Leena Avastha?
See, it's simply when the symptoms are more prominent, that's a Bahudosha Avastha. When the symptoms are milder, it's the Alpadosha Avastha. So Bahudosha would produce Bahulakshana. That's the very plain thing. But to consider that the Shodhana is indicated only in Bahudosha Avastha is not justified. Shodhana is indicated even in a healthy person, and it may be indicated in every stage of the disease. But from the practical point of view, because the Shodhana Chikitsa is somewhat more laborious than simply a Shamana Chikitsa where you give a tablet and then swallow, it may not be acceptable to the patient. So now somehow practically the Shodhana Chikitsa now is limited to patients who do not respond to the conservative Shamana Chikitsa medical treatment as such. But to say that Shodhana Chikitsa is indicated only, but it may not be practical to suggest Shodhana in every patient. So we usually limit Shodhana Chikitsa to such patients where the other medical treatment, conservative medical treatment, doesn't yield sufficient results, or if the patient is ready to take the Shodhana Chikitsa easily. So that's how we decided about
that. Thank you, sir. Sir, Shodhana therapies, how to adopt in below poverty line people, sir? If not, alternate.
I think if you follow the Shodhana therapy, it's not very costly. I don't think that it will be that question of below poverty line doesn't come in. The whole course of a woman or the Virechana in our setup in hospital, in SDM hospital, in a general ward patient, for the whole course it will be around 600 rupees. I think majority of our patients can, or even so-called below poverty line patients also can afford to that kind of a treatment. And even if the patient cannot afford, to subsidize 600 rupees in a week may not be a problem as such. So to consider that Shodhana Chikitsa is a costly treatment is not realistic. But of course, our community, Ayurvedic community has presented it in such a way that it's a costly treatment. So Panchakarma treatment now is one of the money earning business. So that's the criticism. But still it has occurred, and I always criticize that part. Right.
Thank you, sir. Sir, how to manage ligamental tear, sir?
How to manage?
Ligamental tear.
Ligamental tear. See, ligamental tear, it depends upon the intensity of the tear. If the tear is, which ligament again? It's a cruciate ligament, knee joint. So I think the most common variety. See, if it's a fresh case cruciate ligament injury and the patient is young and then a sports person who needs a very efficient movement, a surgical treatment may be preferred. But most of the times, even after surgical treatment, patient may not be relieved as such. But if otherwise, if the patient is ready to take the medicines, I would be preferring the internal medications, because it's a prolonged treatment like Gokshuladigukul and Punarnamatura, Rasana is the usual prescription which I prescribe. And then for the relief of the pain and to facilitate the recovery, I would prescribe simply a Anuvasana Basti, usually Balataila Anuvasana Basti for prolonged duration. It's not limited to 1 week or 2 weeks, maybe 1 month or 2 months. And most of the times I would advise the patient to take the Basti himself at home, maybe with some assistance in the home instead of coming to the hospital because it is a safer plan. It helps that. The other Shodhana Chikitsa cannot be necessary to treat a ligament injury otherwise.
Thank you, sir. In comment box, many have told pranam, sir. Very informative session, and they are
Okay.
seeking blessings from you, sir.
Okay,
Now,
thank you.
thank you, sir. Now, I would like to call our HOD, sir, for vote of thanks.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste. Thank you.
Sorry, sir, we have given trouble to you. And
Not at all, not at all a trouble. Okay, then I have enjoyed that.
thank you very much, sir. I hope that before of your session, our entire 15 days webinar series is not going to complete. Many of the unsolved questions were solved in your session, and most of your students, they were occupying administrative posts as a principals and even faculty members or as a practitioner, and even still they are studying. They are all enriched their knowledge by your vast experience and as well as clinical command in practice of Panchakarma and as well as Shalya Tantra. Even including me, I too followed your many of your treatment protocols like LS Mishrana and all. I learnt by you only, sir, as you are most oftenly practicing in Srotogata Vikaras, means especially Swasa Roga and other conditions. For that, really, I would like to say pranamam to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of our institution and as well as our principal, madam, she also conveyed her pranamam to you. Due to some administrative work, madam, she is in
Okay.
meeting. She could not able to join the session. On behalf of madam, once again, I'd like to
Okay.
convey my pranamam to you, sir. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much, sir. Thank you, sir.